This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Welcome to Jumping Bomb Audio.
Everyone, and welcome back to Jumping Bomb Audio, a podcast all about Joshi Pro Wrestling. I'm Aaron, and I am joined, of course, by Taylor. What's up, Taylor?
Hi, we have a lot to talk about, but the most important thing we have to get to first, Aaron, is a little birdie told me that you have some information on the question that's been haunting us for the past few weeks about some gear.
That's so true, but I didn't prepare for this at all, so now I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to look up the picture right now so that I can make sure that okay. I've found it. I know what I'm talking about. So the question has been, what is Hiroyo Matsumoto's gear intended to evoke? And I have suggested, apparently embarrassingly, that perhaps it was meant to evoke a hamburger or a taco in all those colors, right? So I asked this question, or I kind of discussed this question with my Japanese teacher, because I told her that one thing I wanted to know how to say before I go back to Japan again is how to ask this question in case I run into Hiroyo Matsumoto. And so I showed her a picture of Hiroyo and the gear. And I'm like, look, you got your, I'm like explaining it. And she's like, yeah, that's not what it is. She's like, those colors are the colors of traditional Japanese kabuki stage curtains. So if you go type in Japanese stage curtains or kabuki curtains or whatever, you'll find that they have these. It's just like apparently a traditional Japanese color combination of the black, the orange, and the green. And as soon as I saw those curtains, I was like, oh yeah, that's obviously what her gear is supposed to be. Have you looked it up, Taylor?
I have not looked it up, although I am going to look it up right now. I was about to say, all joking aside, that is very impressive that she knew that right off the bat.
Yeah, it was immediate. As soon as I pulled up a picture.
I am wondering now, I am seeing it now, and you are 100%. That is 100% correct. So I'm assuming at this point you are not intending on going to Japan to do your own research. Would that be correct?
Oh, that's true. I'm going to assume this is the answer. I don't know. Do you think Hiroyo Matsumoto would think it was funny if I was like, hey, I thought your gear was supposed to be a taco, but it's really these curtains?
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was like, what would be the reaction to, because I don't know that there would, well, I don't know. I can't think of like an equivalent question for sort of not this situation of like, oh, are you supposed to look like, would looking like a hamburger and you didn't mean to look like a hamburger, would you be offended? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But immediately when I suggested it, my Japanese teacher was like, that's almost certainly not true, because neither hamburgers nor tacos are particularly popular in Japan. Just foods that haven't really caught on there.
Yes, I know they have some hamburger meat, but not the traditional That is true with the bun and lettuce, which would be the important things here because those are the two other colors
Right.
in this situation.
And then we went on to discuss that Taco Bell just like didn't really work in Japan. They tried to do Taco Bell in Japan, and the Japanese people were just not into it.
Interesting. But that's sometimes, that's what happens sometimes. I'm sure I can't think of any now, I'm blanking, but I'm sure there's been things in America that have been attempted food-wise that have not caught on.
Yes, of course. Yeah. I was trying to think of one, but not.
The only one I can think of is like New Coke, but New Coke isn't like it's not like, this British food, New Coke.
Right. But it is true that like there are many different types of foreign food that are popular in the United States, and some are more popular than others, obviously. Like I'm sure there are Japanese people who like hamburgers or tacos, but just not widely popular.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, just when you're listening to this, Google the traditional Japanese stage curtains, and you will find that that's clearly what her thing is supposed to be. My Japanese teacher also said that Matsumoto has like a Yankee look, which I hadn't really considered.
Oh, I hadn't either. When I see that, I don't know. I guess maybe because, I don't know. I think of other people having a stronger Yankee look than she does.
Yeah, she was just saying like the hair, especially, the really curly hair. Yeah.
I didn't know that the hair was part of it.
Apparently it can be. I don't know. I mean, this is obviously all the opinions of one person. So
sure.
True or not, I don't know, but that was just that was her take. So
look, from solely your describing various situations and interactions you've had with her, I've gained a great respect.
Oh yeah,
for your Japanese teacher.
The fact that she puts up with me, I think generally.
Well, sure. Better you say it than me.
Yeah, I mean it's true. I mean I know it's true. We did last week, so we were doing the promos, as you know, and that became a struggle because it just ended up in her having to do a lot of wrestling research to try to understand what the things meant, to like figure out the context of what was going on. And so she's like, maybe we should try something else. And I showed her some of like the guidebooks I bought in Japan. Like, you'll have some writing in Japanese, maybe, like trying to read or translate those would be helpful. And so she kind of looked through them and she picked out the Tokyo Joshi Pro guidebook that I bought at the Korakuen Hall show, the 1-4 show in 2020. And so we've been going through there, and there's like a little bio for each wrestler. They're like 4 or 5 sentences. It takes me hours to translate them into English. But last week we were doing Rikatatsumi. And of course, this is all a little dated because I got it, over, about a year and a half ago or so at this point. And, the whole thing was really about her feud with Misao. And Misao's like change from into Misao and then back into Hyper Misao, right? And it was very confusing to her to try to figure out like what the sentences meant until I was able to kind of explain to her more about the context of the story, because there was like a part that I really couldn't figure out what it said, and she's like, "Well, it might mean this," but like the Japanese characters are so dependent on context, and so finally I was able to explain to her more of the context of the story, so that was able to help her understand and explain to me what the kanji said.
That's a beautiful story of exchanging wonderful cultural information.
That was a cultural exchange, for sure.
That did remind me that a couple years ago at some Evolve show at Laboom, they randomly at the merch stand had a bunch of Dragon Gate guidebooks. like 20 randomly from Japan. I don't know where they came from, if they were like someone owned them and just said sell these to make money. And I bought all of them. And I was like, I'm going to learn Japanese and go through and read these because it'll be a lot of fun. And of course, I have not done that, but I still do have the guidebooks, and they're a lot of fun.
It turns out it's really hard to learn Japanese. I'm about a year in, and I still don't know a ton, but I know a decent amount.
Well, you can never say this podcast is not educational because everyone's learned a little something today.
Absolutely. Now you know about these traditional curtains, and us both being theater people, Taylor, I thought it was particularly interesting and perhaps particularly embarrassing that we didn't know.
That could be true both ways.
All right. Well, if you want to be further educated, make sure you're following us on Twitter at JBombAudio. I'm at Aaron Like the Car. Taylor's at Tay Mainbow. Subscribe to the show on whatever podcast app you use. Give us a 5-star rating and review on the Apple Podcast app. It helps people find the show. And if you want to donate to the show, you can do so by going to redcircle.com/shows/jumping-bomb-audio. The main thing we're going to talk about on today's show, finally, a very timely show for us to talk about. Stardom's Tokyo Dream Cinderella, I think is the name of it. Tokyo Cinderella Dream. Tokyo Dream Cinderella. I got it right the first time, baby.
Special edition.
Special edition from Ota-Ward Gymnasium. The most recent big Stardom show. We're going to talk about the whole thing, but Taylor, first, what were your overall thoughts on the show?
I thought for most of it, my thoughts were it was a solid show, but not overly spectacular. But I really enjoyed the main event, as we'll talk about in a little bit. But overall, I thought it was a fairly strong show. There was nothing that I thought was, really, I thought everything was either average or better than average going into, good. So, a strong showing, but I don't think it was their best big show of 2021.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It definitely was a fun show and an easy watch, which listeners know these are things that I value in wrestling. It didn't stay too long. And we'll talk about it here, but there were a couple of things that happened that were pretty compelling that I'm like, curious to see, what's going to happen next. Stardom has been in a little bit of a rut for me recently of like just not doing a lot of stuff that I really cared too much about the follow-up on. But there's a couple things here that I'm curious about. So that was nice. But let's go through the card from the top. Now, there was a pre-show match. I believe it was Lady C versus Hina versus Rina in a 3-way match. But I don't think anyone has seen that match, so we can't talk about it. So that means the actual opening match that we all saw was a semifinal in the Cinderella tournament. And it was Micah versus Unagi Sayaka. And Micah was the ultimate winner, being our first finalist in the Cinderella tournament.
Yeah, I'm of sort of two minds on less on this match, but more sort of on the larger picture of things. And I found myself during the match sort of going between these two sort of fields of thought, I guess, which is, Unagi, it's so weird to me that, and we've talked about on the show before, that this promotion, Stardom, needs more people who they can put out there who can lose. And, a while back they get, Mina Shirakawa and they get Unagi. And I know that our initial thoughts on the show were that the two of them would come in and would probably lose more than they win. But really, that has not been the case. They have been booked very similar to the way a lot of other people are booked, which is that they are, being moved up the card, which is a little bit strange to me. Although, on the other hand, so that was sort of the one thought. On the other hand, I did sort of like the story that they set up with Unagi winning these matches by, over the top rope. I think that's an effective story that you can use during the Cinderella tournament. I think it's a little bit more effective of a story when the tournament is one day as opposed to stretched out like this. Now, some of the stretch on this was not was out of Stardom's hands, so it's a little bit different. But I just think the energy of sort of one person catching fire, getting a strategy that works, that, you know, isn't just, oh, let's stand in the middle of the ring and, you know, go at it, is fun. And it's a little bit different when you have it on multiple days, because then, you know, you're thinking, oh, well, wouldn't someone have seen the match and gone, oh, she's going to favor, you know, getting people over the top rope. But I thought the match was, you know, fairly good. I thought Micah looked very good. Looked really strong. Unagi is someone who still, for me, is not there yet in ring wise, which is fine, especially when she was sort of lower on the card. But those issues become, I think, more pronounced as she's put in this sort of larger spot, even though this was the opening match of the show. You know, it's just some things where at times she does not look completely comfortable in the ring. There's moves where, you know, she took a suplex off the top from Micah, which looked really great when it was, you know, Micah lifting her up. And then she sort of came down on her feet and then her back. It was just weird. There's just a sense of she's not entirely at that level yet that I think some of the other, you know, Micah, Himika, even, you know, Sayakamitani, the other three that were in the Cinderella tournament. So, you know, I'm sort of, as I said, I'm of sort of two minds where I can see both positives and negatives here.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Something, you know, this is kind of my brain, and, you know, regular listeners will not be surprised by this. But something I've been thinking about a lot is Micah, to me, is pushed heavier than Momo, for example. And I just wonder what separates those two. It was clear when Bushiroad came into Stardom that they weren't interested in Momo. And, you know, she obviously had been a top champion for a long time, a big deal in the company, one of the top stars. And then she was, you know, nothing. She stuck here on a three-way tag shuffle match where she didn't really get to do much. And I just find, like, Momo is obviously a better wrestler than Micah, certainly more charismatic than Micah. And I'm a big Micah fan. I hope everybody knows that from listening. But I just find it strange that Micah is pushed to the level she is while Momo isn't. And perhaps it's simply due to Micah's closeness with Julia. And, you know, all of Dona del Mundo gets a pretty nice push. I don't know if that's part of it. But the Unagi thing is certainly interesting. But for me, because I'm a psycho who is a big Momo fan, I've just was struck by the fact that I don't see really anything that Micah does better than Momo, again, even though I love Micah, and yet she's in a much better position.
Yeah, I don't, you know, I totally see where you're coming from. And there's times when I don't entirely really understand what Stardom thinks about a lot of their wrestlers. In terms of this, you know, this is looking a little bit ahead, but, you know, Micah goes through to the finals, not Himika. You know, what is the decision there? They have both seemed very similar, but there are times when all of a sudden it seems like they're very hot on Micah, and then they're less hot on her, and then they're hot on Himika. There's just a sort of confusing sense of, like, who does the company really see as that sort of next, you know, phase of wrestlers to build up the card, because that's largely what, you know, Cinderella tournament does. And you could say, well, all four of these people have sort of moved up because they're in the Final Four, and this 4 happens to take place on a big show. But it's just not entirely clear. Do Stardom see all 4 of these people as, future tops of the company? Do they not? Are they just there because they, need a body for, the win, Saya to defeat? Or, did they just bring Unagi up because Micah could beat her? So yeah, it is a little bit murky. So I do agree with you. There.
Also strange if they do. I mean, Unagi is in her 30s already, so it's doubtful she's going to be a top star in the company, although she is fairly new. So, certainly there's more to be pulled out of her, I suppose. But yeah, the other 3 are much more interesting to me as what their futures could be in the company. But we'll have more time to talk about that elsewhere, I'm sure. The second match was the other semifinal in the Cinderella tournament, Himika versus Sayakamitani. And as Taylor suggested, Sayakamitani won. Is the move called the Star Crusher, Taylor?
You're asking me what the move is called?
You're right. I'm sorry. What I thought was interesting is that Micah and Kamitani won with people move people are going to be mad at me, but they're both what they do is pretty similar to a Michinoku driver.
Yeah, I would love to have an encyclopedic knowledge of moves, but that is one of the skills I do not possess. But Aaron, I have to give you credit to build you back up a little bit. You nailed this. Because when we previewed the show, you said Sayakamitani, and I doubted you heavily, and you showed me.
You did, Taylor, and I've been thinking about it ever since. Kind of stuck in my craw, and I was like, I'm gonna prove this Taylor guy wrong when Tokyo Dream Cinderella comes around, and boy did I!
Boy did you, in the biggest way, because and this match. I didn't really have that many thoughts about it. Partway through, I was sort of watching it, and I was like, what do I think of this match? And I was like, it's fine. I think there's a thing with Saya still where, and we've talked about, stringing together the offense and things like that. I still think there's a sense of, sort of building the match. And I think because she's so young, her matches don't really always connect with me in terms of building in a way that gets me invested as the match goes on. Sometimes it sort of feels to me just like, okay, I'm going to do this move now, and now it's going to be this move. They're not bad matches. It doesn't make them bad. It just doesn't hit me in a way that gets me invested over time. It just feels sort of like, oh, I'm watching wrestling.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And that was I remember having a real concern about that in her big match with Utami, because Utami hadn't really shown much skill in leading less talented wrestlers or, less experienced wrestlers. And they ended up having a great match. So I really wasn't sure where Kamitani was heading. But I think this show certainly suggested that you're right, that wasn't a leap for her. Honestly, looking back at this show, now I'm not sure exactly what was to credit for that excellent match that they had. But yeah, the match didn't really grab me, and I think it's exactly because of what you said. I really need, unless you're just doing absolutely crazy spots that I don't really care what the story is. I can just enjoy the insanity that's happening. But if you're not putting together, a narrative from the beginning to the end, it's hard to. And the narrative can just be, as you're talking about, that the stakes get more intense. The match gets heightened as we go on. And yeah, we don't really get that with Kamitani. But I was mostly excited that she won because it would mean you were wrong and I was right.
I'm glad that's what's important to you.
It absolutely is. Next up was the 3-way shuffle tag where everybody came out. Then we drew sticks for team members. And the teams ended up being Mina Shirakawa, I said that strangely, and Momo Watanabe versus Natsupoi and Azumi versus Julia and Tom Nakano. And our winners were Azumi and Natsupoi, and Azumi pinned Mina Shirakawa.
Yeah, I thought this was a lot of fun. I thought that the little twist of dividing the teams up by draw was a lot of fun, whether that was, done as a shoot or whether, they sort of fudged it a little bit to get certain people on certain teams. We don't know, but, I thought it was a lot of fun. And I think with a match like this, sort of lower on the card, there aren't really that many stakes to it. I think doing things like this, adding a little element, it doesn't really distract from the match itself. It doesn't overpower the match, but it gives it sort of a fun twist. And I was reading a lot because I finished the show and I just sort of went online just to see sort of what people were thinking, just get a sense of it. And there were a lot of people who were saying this felt sort of like a Stardom match of a few years ago when they would just, throw in, a little twist, or they would do the costume battle royals or things like that. Just a fun match. And so I really enjoyed it. And up to this point, this was my favorite match of the show.
Can we talk about Azumi's hair? It's wild.
Oh, yeah. I was like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's being, but like sometimes you grow it so you can do something else with it.
Sure.
Like you get the length so that you can cut it down in a way that it looks, a certain way, but you need the length to go shorter.
Right.
That could be it. But yes, that did also jump out to me.
It definitely could be at like a weird, like in between thing for whatever she's growing. But she absolutely purposefully did like the little like curl at the bottom. Normally she has like the stick straight hair. And this it's wild. She aged herself like 10 years.
Maybe that was the goal.
Maybe. Well, she succeeded. This has been the hair corner on Jumping Bomb Audio. Okay, next up we had the Oedo Tai versus Stars. I think it was called an all-out war match, if I'm not mistaken. Great band, by the way, All Out War, if anybody's listening. So here were the teams. Natsuko Tora, Fukigen Death, Saki Kashima, Konami, Ruaka versus Mayu Iwatani, Starlight Kid, Koguma, Hanan, and Lin Kadokura. And the idea here was, like the last match they had, the last person to lose would have to switch teams. And Taylor, a genuine surprise here. Starlight Kid was the loser. We'll have to join Oedo Tai. Natsuko pinned Kid while Mayu was tied to the turnbuckle.
Yeah, we were talking about it earlier this week when all the stipulation was announced and the X's were announced. That we were a bit concerned that maybe this was leading to Fukigen Death going back to Stars and rendering sort of both of these matches that they've had sort of pointless, I guess. But that did not happen. A truly shocking outcome, and one where I'm genuinely curious to see what happens next in terms of, where does this character of Starlight Kid go? I think this is a great... to me, frankly, I would have done only one of these matches, and I would have done this second match. The Fukigen Death, it's like, okay, it gives Oedo Tai another member, but, I do think it's sort of undercut this match a bit, even before sort of the match began, because it's sort of like, I saw a lot of reaction when they announced it. It's like, they're doing the same stipulation again? And I think it would have had a little bit more oomph had it been that first one where you're going, well, it could be, anyone, and you're saying, well, it's probably going to be, one of the lower tier wrestlers. And I think it would have had more power if you would have gotten Starlight Kid there right off the bat. Also, the fact that now Stars has lost twice in a row doesn't make them look great. But like I said, I thought the match was very well worked. I thought everyone worked really hard. Even at the beginning, like Ruaka was really impressing me. And then, of course, she got eliminated. Konami was doing very well. So I think it was a well-worked match with a good ending. So really, what more could you really ask for?
Stars is really hurting now. I mean, they already had to bring in Karakura for this match. They had to, they brought back Koguma. So losing Starlight Kid is like a huge, huge loss for Stars.
Well, Aaron, I'm just going to say this on every episode we have until it happens or until, I guess, something else happens, the end of the world or something. Maybe this is all leading to, Stars gets really down and they bring in Yusuke Aikawa back to lift Stars up again and defeat Oedo Tai.
That would be sick. I would like that. Someone suggested in our mentions, and I just don't think it can happen. That Kairi Sane is going to be the one to come back and revitalize Stars, but that doesn't appear to be in the offing, unfortunately. So I don't know what's going to happen, but exactly what you said. It's like, this is, to me, the most compelling thing that's happened in Stardom in quite some time, where I'm genuinely curious and will absolutely tune in to whatever next show happens, just to see. I'm sure you're going to tell me in a little bit what the next show is, just to see what Kid and Oedo Tai looks like. That sounds interesting. It's not going to fix like that all the other matches featuring Oedo Tai are bad, so I'm not sure how that's going to play in. But it's also good for Kid to give her like something new to do and freshen her up a little bit. So seems good for everybody, really.
Now, Aaron, if you had to predict, what would be the Oedo Tai version of Starlight Kid? Because I was thinking, like, what's the opposite of Starlight? Like Moonlight?
Or just like darkness, right? I mean, I guess Starlight is in darkness, though, but like complete darkness.
That's her new gimmick name is complete
darkness Kid. What's like a what's the star called that's like dying or that's dead already?
Are you asking about a specific star?
No, there's like a type of star that's like we still see them, but it turns out they died like 1,000,000 years ago or some shit.
All that's coming to my mind is supernovas, but that's not it, right?
I mean, I'm very dumb when it comes to like
or like but isn't that like a brown dwarf?
Oh, white dwarf. I don't think
okay.
I don't think that's a good name for her.
No.
Now that I've looked it up, I wouldn't do that. Really.
Yeah, I think that's one for the reject pile.
Oh gosh.
That's what you throw out during the brainstorming session. There's no wrong answers. What about white dwarf? Okay. Maybe there are wrong answers.
Oh jeez. All right. I'm just going to move on from that now. The Cinderella tournament final came next. Sayakamitani versus Micah. And Sayakamitani won with, I believe, a Phoenix Splash. That's what I'm going to call it. So Sayakamitani is your Cinderella tournament winner. As I predicted.
Yeah. Yes, as Aaron predicted. We have to say it every time we mention it. The man who came up with White Dwarf also predicted Sayakamitani would win the tournament. You win some, you lose some.
Also is a white guy who's short. So, I mean, bad. I hope this nickname doesn't catch on.
I enjoyed it. I had similar feelings to the semifinal match with Himika. I liked the leg work because I thought it just sort of distinguished the match from the other two semifinal matches. It didn't it didn't really bring the match up hugely for me, but I was like, oh, this is sort of an interesting way to go. But again, felt very similar. I think seeing two Saya matches also in one night is sort of like, oh yeah, I think that is what it is, that there isn't a ton of sort of natural flow from point to point and, build for me.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the leg thing was good, but then they seemed to abandon it, or at least Micah didn't seem to care about it as the match went on. It was just, it's tough to put two wrestlers of these levels of experience in a final like this. They both can be very good in the right match, especially Micah for me. But I think putting the two of them together maybe wasn't the best idea here. So it's, I was trying to think back about some other Cinderella tournament finals, and I remember like Konami being in there with Arisa Hoshiki, if I'm remembering correctly. And, Konami's not, I mean, she's like 23 or whatever, 24. But, she's a veteran. She's someone who can definitely keep a match together. And of course, Arisa was a veteran also, even though she'd been gone for like 6 years or whatever. So yeah, I just kind of a tough ask of both of them. And I don't think it was a fine match, but I don't think they were able to take it to any sort of next level. And then we had the main event for the World of Stardom Championship. Utami Hayashishita versus Syuri, and Utami Hayashishita. Oh no, she didn't win. Sorry. How could I forget? Because it went to not one draw, Taylor, but the match was restarted and it went to a second draw.
Aaron, okay, so let's get the negative. Let's get the negative out of the way.
That's a good idea.
Which is that I will say the first draw, when they announced that first draw, it infuriated me. I was watching the show and I said out loud, "You have got to be fucking kidding me." It went to a draw, and then then they decided to restart the match, and I thought, okay, that's sort of interesting. They do all these draws, and maybe the reason they've been doing all these draws is that to fool you into think, oh, whenever a draw happens, the match ends. But here's a little twist. And then the match ended in a draw, double KO draw, which I believe was the same ending as Julia Syuri from, was that November?
I don't remember dates, but that sounds right.
And it's just, it's one of those things where I get in isolation, I understand the story of Syuri comes in, she's super talented, she throws everything she's got at Utami, and Utami manages to, sort of get the draw, fight her off, not win, but also not lose, get the draw. And there is sort of an interesting story there. The issue is they do draws almost every single show they run. If you go and you look, there are so many draws. So that would imply that this story is happening over and over. And the last time we brought up draws, and I try not to bring it up because it happens all the time and there's really no new information that's happening except they're doing too many draws. I had some people that I was talking with who said, it's not a big deal. They're happening on these house shows, or they're happening, once, at maybe a Korakuen once in a while, or they're happening here. But they're happening so often that to me, this could have been an exciting, they went to a draw. What are they going to do? Oh, they're going to start over. Okay. Oh, they went to another draw again. I can't believe it. But the only thing I could think about was, of course they went to a draw. Almost, 5% of all matches or 10% of all matches in Stardom go to draw. And it takes the power out of using a draw as a tool to enhance a story, as opposed to the draw as just a tool to avoid having someone lose, which is essentially looking at the draws that happen, looking at who's in the, matches. Stardom has used it as a tool to sort of kick the can down the road, as it were, to say, well, all of these 4 people, we want them to be strong, but we want them in the same match, but we don't want anyone to lose. So we'll just sort of move it down the road and they can have a draw, and then, everyone will be the same. so that's my negative side of the match. My positives are I thought the in-ring stuff outside of the finish was I thought it was really, really very good. I thought it was excellent stuff. And I was saying to myself, watching the match, I'm annoyed by this draw stuff happening, but I can't let it take away from the fact that, Utami and Syuri probably, were backstage and someone tells them you have to go to a, time limit draw and then you have to go to a knockout draw. And they go out there and they have to do that. And I think within the constraints of what they were given to do, they did an excellent job. I thought Syuri looked amazing. And in my personal opinion, watching the match, knowing it was supposed to go to a draw, I was thinking, maybe they should call an audible and just have Syuri win. Because to me, we have talked about on the show, she's super talented. Many times before we've mentioned it, but she just seemed like someone who has that X factor. Obviously super talented in the ring, is really interesting, has this sort of background, this MMA, UFC background, and has the sort of charisma that makes her really interesting to watch. She looked really good in this match. Her offense looked deliberate in a way that everything was very calculated. It was 100%. It wasn't wishy-washy sort of, oh, what do I do now? Going for the submissions, doing the strikes. I mean, she was taking crazy bumps. She took that bump into the apron head first, which I don't know if that was planned or not, but looked crazy. And I just think at this point, to me, you've been working on Utami as sort of this, giving her the title, having her, wrestle these matches, being on big shows. To me, she has not quite gotten there to the point where I say, okay, she has, she has the thing and she is up cemented at the top of this promotion. It hasn't 100% clicked. She's had a number of good matches, as we've talked about on the show. This match, and and many of her other matches are very, very good, but it just doesn't feel like she has that extra thing that I felt Syuri had in this match, that I think Syuri winning, you could have really locked her in and gone, look at this. We got a new big star, this ex-MMA fighter. She's so tough. She really came out here and, like really fought Utami, gave it all she had and won. It's not necessarily, I didn't end the match and go, oh, Syuri won. I hated that. But that would have been my thought. All that being said, I thought it was still an excellent, excellent match. I went 4.5 stars, so I still thought it was very good in spite of the, issues I had with the finish and sort of the midway point of the match.
I think the bigger, I don't know if it's the bigger problem with the double draw, but a big problem with the match is that I don't think Syuri is booked credibly enough to have this match with Utami. She looked great here. I agree with you completely. She worked circles around Utami, in my opinion. She's certainly much more charismatic than Utami is in the ring. But I was looking back through Syuri singles matches in Stardom, and she never gets the big win. She beats everybody in like the middle of the promotion, but she never beats Julia or Mayu or Utami. She doesn't get those wins. So the idea that she would win this match honestly never entered my brain while watching this. Never occurred to me that Syuri was going to win. I figured Utami would pull it out in the end. The first draw was similarly infuriating to me. The second draw, I just laughed when it happened. I was like, of course, that's what we're going to do. But I think we had two main problems. Syuri's just, to me, non-credibility as a top champion in the way she's been booked, and which, again, has nothing to do with her performances. And two, a lot of the match was built, this kind of plays into this, but a lot of the match was built around Shuri beating down Utami. And Utami, to me, does not have the in-ring charisma to like really sell that to the point where you feel like she's on her last leg. She's in danger of losing. You see Syuri get some of these, especially in like the second period or whatever you want to call it, the overtime. You see Syuri lock in some of these submission holds, and Utami's got to fight for the ropes, but you still don't really feel that danger, I don't think, because Utami hasn't given it to us throughout the match. Now, this match is going to be behind the 8 ball for me anyway, because it's like a 40-minute match, and I just don't think matches should be that long. And it starts out kind of slow in that like New Japan main event style that is just not for me, just not what I like. But that said, like if you factor in the slow start, there was a lot of great stuff in the match, mostly Syuri. Brutal kicks, super stiff, all sounded great. Syuri makes the noises. She gives you the facial expressions, and she just always feels like she's fighting and trying to win the match. And I love that about her. Syuri's one of my favorite wrestlers in the world, and I thought she was great here. But Utami did have some great stuff. A lot of it was like her, you kind of call them like hope spots or whatever, where she kind of gets her little comeback. Then it kind of comes out of nowhere where she has to do a move. God, that, as you talked about, that suplex onto that Syuri took on her head on the apron, that was insane. During the overtime period, there was some drama, I think, just because you're like, oh, this is a little different. But overall, it was a match I liked. It was held back for me by the fact that I never thought Syuri could win, and by Utami's performance in like the fighting from underneath role. I would go 4. You might be able to talk me into 4.25, but probably 4. Because it was good. There was just a lot of stuff that held it back for me. And I think on your larger point, Taylor, I've been skeptical of Utami as a top star because of her charisma issues. I've always thought she was an excellent worker, and I'm not sure she's even brought that in all of her big red belt matches. The match with Sayakamitani I liked quite a bit. This match I liked quite a bit. But she used to have these. I think she used to have better matches. Maybe it was the pressure wasn't on her as much. But because I was already skeptical, nothing has really dissuaded me from that yet. That I'm just not sure she can be the ace, the person on top of a promotion.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, at the time when she won the belt, I think we both agreed, and I would probably still agree, that it was the right choice for her to win, to sort of give her that opportunity. We had been talking about, giving people opportunities at the top of the card to try and make stars and try and make some big names to draw in the fans. And they've had some big shows. Some of them have not been headlined by Utami, which doesn't take away from the fact that they've done very well and Utami's had good matches. But it just feels like it hasn't hit the point where, with someone like Julia, for example, I don't think there's anyone on earth who would talk about Julia or look at Julia and go, not a star, no doubter, locked in. Even really sort of before the big hair versus hair match, you would have thought that. Now it's definitive. But I just don't get that sense with Utami, where I'm like, she comes out and I'm like, whoa, like, this is a big time person. It still feels like someone who is sort of growing into that, and it may still happen. But now, of course, you have the pressure of, she's been there a while, and I'm sure that they have other people they want to move up or stories they want to try. We've talked about on the show probably this pending Utami versus Julia match where you might assume that Julia would win that match, and at that point, is Utami established enough where that loss, is she established enough that she can stay up at the higher level after that loss? I don't know yet. And as to your other point, I agree that I came into the match thinking Utami was going to win almost without a doubt. There's always a chance at the other way. And so that also did affect it a little bit for me. I was watching Syuri going, if I were them, I would, give it to Syuri, but I don't know that I ever thought, oh, they will, especially I think in the overtime period. There was a moment when it was sort of like she had an armbar, Utami got to the ropes, she got something else, Utami got to the ropes, and then she got sort of a third thing and Utami got to the ropes, and it sort of just hit the point for me where it felt like, at that point I thought, oh, Utami's going to win because the story will be Syuri tried everything and her best shot didn't work. Now it was slightly different where they both did the double knockout, but it did feel like she was hitting her with so much that Utami was, especially the submissions, getting to the ropes, that I didn't see the path of, okay, then it would go, Syuri would, would the story be, oh, Syuri gets on another submission and it just happens that this submission is the one that works. It just didn't seem like the story was going that way. So I've seen some people, people have said, oh, match of the year. And I think that sort of feeling of, oh, I don't think Syuri's winning, probably will hold it back a little bit for me from that level, but still thought it was very good.
All right. And after, God, if you were on a high, if you really loved this match, which I'm happy for you, and you were on a high, had to be deflating then to see Natsuko Tora come out as a potential next challenger.
Yes.
Oh, I was going to say, if you defend that, Taylor, I'll be stunned.
No. I will. Yeah. I'll just let that lie.
Okay. Support for Jumping Bomb Audio is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. They offer precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. They obsess over their technology. They got the best tools for grooming experience. We have an exclusive offer for our listeners, 20% off plus free shipping with the code JUMP. That's JUMP at manscaped.com. I know Manscaped sent us both the Perfect Package 3.0 kit, which not only has the Lawnmower 3.0, but it also has a lot of their other things like the Crop Preserver, which is a favorite of mine because it just helps you with a little chafing if you have that sort of issue, which I do, especially in the hot summer. So they have that, but the Lawnmower 3.0 has an LED light, which allows you to get a more precise shave. It's waterproof, so you can use it in the shower if you want. And they also throw in the Perfect Package, a pair of briefs and a t-shirt. Actually, no, I'm sorry, not a t-shirt. I'm wearing the Manscaped t-shirt right now. So I was thinking about the t-shirt. But yes, you can trim that junk of yours with 20% off plus free shipping with the code JUMP at manscaped.com, and your balls will thank you. All right. Oh, that was not intended, but it turned out to be very funny.
Wow.
I was...
Okay, what was that?
So, we use a program called Zencaster to record the show, and I was trying to type in you can make a little note, and I was trying to put in the timing for the end of the ad read because we have to keep up with that. And when I hit it, there's also like a way to have a sound bar. No, what's the right word that I'm looking for?
A sound cue?
Sound board. There's a way to have, there's a sound board in Zencaster.
Oh, yeah.
And so whatever I hit appeared to use the sound for the cymbal crash you would do after a joke. Very funny to me. I'm leaving that in, obviously. It was fun.
Obviously, although now you've opened up a scary world where I may expect other sounds.
Yes, sorry.
I'll cue you. I'll say something, and then I'll say cue the. I don't know. How many options you got?
I only have 4 right now. But you can add your own, which is the real scary part.
Ooh.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about some of the other shows, which there weren't many that happened over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, so Stardom also had a Korakuen show before their big show. There were some Future of Stardom tournament matches. Hina defeated Rina in the first round of that tournament. Unagi Sayaka defeated Hanan in the semifinal, and then Hina had another match. She was defeated by Mina Shirakawa in the semifinal, so that tournament is getting close to ending, and Natsupoi successfully defended her high-speed title against Fukiken Death. There is a big, at the time this is released, it will have just happened. The Gaea show is happening, unless in the next about 12 hours or so something goes terribly wrong. It is finally, after a year plus of talking about the show, it is happening. It will have happened by the time this is released. It is available on pay-per-view internationally through Zyko, which has been used by a number of these companies. It is a little bit high-priced. It is 5,000 yen, but it looks like this, is most likely a one-off show. They've had a lot of delays with, obviously, the show getting moved back because of these state of emergencies. So hopefully it's a good show. I will definitely be watching it. Have been looking forward to it really since it was announced. So happy to know that it is almost here. Also happening tomorrow, the Oz Academy show on the 13th. Sonoko Kato against Kaori Yoneyama for the Oz title. So that has not happened yet, but will have happened by the time this is released. One of the other major shows of the last 2 weeks was the CyberFight Festival, featuring talent from DDT, Noah, Tokyo Joshi. Tokyo Joshi had 4 matches, 3 undercard tag matches in various forms, and then a Princess of Princess title match. The big stories from the undercard matches: Kaya Toribami debuted in Tokyo Joshi's first match. It was a 10-person tag match. Mirai Mayumi, Suzume, Arisu Endo, Haruna Neko, and Moko Miyamoto against Kaya Toribami, Mahiro Kiryu, Nao Kikuta, Pam Harajuku, and Raku. I thought Kaya Toribami looked really great for her debut. A debut on a big show. Looked really great. Had some great high-flying offense, which I thought was really exciting. And I'm really looking forward to seeing more of her matches. And we will be talking about one of those upcoming matches in a few minutes. They had another excellent... they had a 3-way 6-person tag, so it was Hyper Masao and Shoko Nakajima against the Bakuretsu sisters, against Miyu Watanabe and Rika Tatsumi. I find it very shocking that Tokyo Joshi has done so few 3-way matches like this, because they had one on that Korakuen that I thought was really great, and I thought this was really great as well. Keeps up the energy. Having these people in, having it be a 3-way, allows people to come in and out very quickly, switch up, do their stuff, get out, come back in. And so, match that I really enjoyed. The third match, Maki Ito, Marika Kobashi, and Yuki Kamafuku against Hikari Noa, Mizuki, and Yuki Arai. Continuing this feud between Maki Ito and Yuki Arai. Yuki Arai, I thought, looked really great as well. So another rookie. Tokyo Joshi has had a number of great rookies debut. over the last few months, and excited to see where all of them go. And then the big one of three main events for the show, Miyu Yamashita, the champion, defending against Yuka Sakazaki for the Princess of Princess title. And Aaron, what did you think of this match?
I was not crazy about it, Taylor. I'm not going to lie to you here. It was a match I was very excited about. Some of the problems, I think, were like, I hate to blame this, but there was a lot happening on commentary. Like a whole lot happening. Too much happening. The sound was weird. I thought the production was weird. You really couldn't hear the crowd. That made it hard. I don't know if there was... I don't know what caused it, but there were just like some weird spots that seemed to come out of nowhere. Didn't really seem to have the right impact, that you would have wanted for the move. And it just never really came together for me. So I was not in love with this match.
Yeah, I can see that. And I was also really looking forward to the match. And I don't think it got to the point where I really loved it. I think there was, as you mentioned, a little bit of sloppiness that seemed sort of uncharacteristic. But I did think, they had moments that were very exciting to me. It was very hard hitting. I mean, a match with Miyu Yamashita, of course, would be. So I was sort of on the fence between 3 3/4 and 4. I started at 3 3/4. And I think sort of our reactions are very similar to the sort of larger thoughts, which was I was watching live, and some of the people I was watching live with said, oh, it's, a 3, about 3. And then I knew some people who watched afterwards and said, oh, 4.5. It was so great. I loved it. So I think the reaction really has been all over the board. So it was disappointing for me, but I thought they sort of pulled out something amidst sort of these struggles they were having, I guess I would say.
That's very hard for me to understand. Like if somebody loved the Utami versus Syuri match, and we're like match of the year on that, I don't really understand it, but like I get it if you really like that style of match, which I don't really care for. But the Miyu and Yuka match, it stuns me to hear that some people thought that was a 4.5 star caliber match.
That's what makes wrestling so great, Aaron.
I suppose
that we all have wonderful opinions. We all have diverse, wonderful opinions. Anyway, continuing on, Sendai Girls had a show on the 4th, June 4th. Meiho Shizuki retained the junior title over Cannon. Ice Ribbon has had a number of Peace Party shows over the last 2 weeks. They've been running the IWGQ tournament, mini tournament, and it is down, or it actually ended. Matsuyu Uno defeated Madeline in the finals. And tomorrow on June 13th, Matsuyu Uno will take on Tsukushi for that title. So winning the tournament and getting her title match. Also tomorrow on the 13th is the Risa Sera mixed tag team tournament, which we discussed a little about last time. Diana had a dojo show on the 6th, and on just today, haven't managed to see it yet, but there was a Madeline produced show, which had a main event of Madeline against Hikaru Sato, which I believe aired on Kips, which is a streaming service that Ice Ribbon has used in the past and worked very well. Wave had their first 2 days of the Catch the Wave tournament, the full thing after the Young Block ended. A match I would recommend from the 6-1 show, Miyuki Takase against Mio Momono. If you are fans of either one of them, I'm certain it's not surprising. They had an excellent match. Really some great stuff in that I really enjoyed, so I recommend checking that out. And Shoko Pro, the big news was the Best Bros retaining their tag titles over Minoru Fujita and Rina Yamashita. So that is everything that has happened in the last 2 weeks.
All right, and that gives us a chance to dig into what's coming up over the next couple of weeks. I know Stardom has a raft of shows announced, but I don't believe they've announced what's going to be on those shows yet.
Yeah, they have a number of shows, 19th, 20th, 23rd, 24th, 26th, and 27th, but nothing announced yet. I'm sure that will be announced in the coming days as we get the fallout from the big show. Seedling has 2 shows back-to-back coming up this week on the 16th and the 17th. On the 16th, there is going to be some match, Citrus Wind versus La Fresas. And they said that the participants and the rules and everything will be announced at a later date. The poster has a number of people. It has Nanae, Arisa Nakajima, Yumika Hoda, Honori Hana, and Riko Kawahara on one side. And on the other side has Asuka, Ayame Sasamura, Riko Kaiju, and Makoto. So you might maybe deduce from that might be some formation of the teams for this match, but we have not heard yet. And then on the 17th, a big title match. The tag titles will be on the line as the new champions, Asuka and Makoto, take on Yumika Hoda and Rina Yamashita. And then there will be Nanae Takahashi against the returning Ryu Mizunami, and the winner will challenge Asuka for the Beyond the Sea title. And then, as I mentioned a little bit ago, one of the big shows coming up in the next 2 weeks, Tokyo Joshi is back at Korakuen Hall for their next big Korakuen Hall show. So, Aaron, do we want to break this show down?
Let's do it. Let's start at the bottom. I mean, we won't have much to say about these. Nodoka Tenma, Yuki Aino, Aku, Harajuku versus Suzume, Haruneko, Moka Miyamoto, Arisu Endo. I bet this will be like a lot of opening Tokyo Joshi Pro matches.
I think that's probably a solid guess.
Thank you. Then we will get a singles match from the recently debuting Kaya Toribami against Shoko Nakajima.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. As I said, I thought Toribami had a great debut, and I'm interested to see her in a singles setting, as she was in that 10-person tag, which is sometimes, you come in, you do 1 or 2 spots, and then you leave. But interesting to see what she looks like in a full match, one-on-one with one of the better workers in the company.
Then we have Yuki Kamifuku and now Kakuta teaming up to take on Miyu Watanabe and Mahiro Kiru.
Yeah, I don't know. Aaron, do you see maybe there's a story coming out of this match? I can't, I don't see anything jumping out at me.
Yeah, it don't feel like, teams that would get a tag title shot. The only thing that potentially jumps out at me is if somebody pins Kamiyu and that could lead them into an International Princess title shot.
Yeah, that could be. And it's also, interesting to see, as we talked about after the last Korakuen, interesting to see what the path forward for Yuki Kamifuku is, because we, as we said, we don't know. Hopefully she stays up near the top of the show, but we will see, and this will be our first hint of that.
Indeed. So I am curious about that. Mirai Mayumi taking on Yuki Arai.
Yeah, a second sort of more experienced wrestler against a rookie. Another match I'm really excited for. As everyone knows, I've talked up Mayumi a lot, and I think that she will. I think this match has the potential to be very exciting. And to really be able to see the full potential of Arai on display in this match.
Yeah, it also gives Mayumi, obviously she's going to win the match, and I think it's good for her to be getting wins on these bigger shows in Korakuen as she keeps building up the card. So, yeah, I'm excited about this one. Then we have Yuka Sakazaki and Mizuki versus the previously mentioned on this show team of Rika Tatsumi and Hyper Misao.
Yeah, this should be 4 great wrestlers, so should be an excellent match, and I would imagine maybe a number 1 contender match for the whoever emerges from the main event as tag team champions.
I'm going to have to send this match to my Japanese teacher to get her up on what's going on with Tatsumi and Misao.
I'm sure she'll be very excited to receive it.
I'm sure. And then the aforementioned International Princess title will be on the line with the champion Hikari Noa taking on Marika Kobashi. Did either of us come up with Kobashi as a potential challenger last time?
Well, I think at that point I didn't, because she had already challenged. So she wasn't mentioned because she was sort of already in line. I think it was sort of already set up for this. So I was trying to think of sort of people who I didn't want to take credit for being like, who would be great? Marika Kobashi. Oh, wait, that's already happening.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Aaron,
it would have been good for you, though, because you could have corrected being so wrong about Sayakamitani.
Oh, boy. All right. Do you think that there's any world in which Marika Kobashi wins this match?
No, I think there's no world in which she wins this match. I would put it at 5%.
All right. I am very interested in this match, though, because this feels sort of like the first chance for her since she came back to really show, in a one-on-one situation, big match on a Korakuen that is, I would say, slightly less stacked than these Korakuens usually are. There's usually a Princess of Princess title match on a lot of these Korakuens, and there is not one on this match, or on this card. So an opportunity for her really to impress and improve her stock in the company.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mainly just want to listen to her talk about Japanese hip hop, really. Do you ever read her posts about Japanese hip hop?
I do not.
Well, look for them.
I will. I didn't even know that was a thing that was happening.
Oh, yeah. Big Japanese hip hop fan, Marika Kobashi. So try that out. The main event of the Korakuen show will be for the Princess Tag Team titles. Saki-sama and Mei-san Michelle versus Miyu Yamashita and Maki Ito.
Now, this is a match that seems more up in the air to me. Aaron, what do you think? I think it would make sense for Yamashita and Ito to win. I also think that New Bashiki-gun often, wins these tag titles with Saki-sama and some partner, depending on when it is. But it feels like they're not a team designed to hold the titles for a long time. It feels like they're designed to win, sort of be that, team to knock off for a little bit and then find a team to knock them off, and then that team goes on and has a sizable reign with the title. But the twist of it is, are you going to make Yamashita double champion in a company where, as I said, there's no Princess of Princess title match on this show? And do you want to tie her up with 2 titles when you might need in your, available matches, a next Korakuen, we really need to get people in. Okay, let's put both a tag team and a Princess of Princess title match on the show. Does that make it harder for them to do that? What do you think, Aaron?
I definitely think so. I mean, we have talked so much in recent months about how great of a job they've done at lengthening their cards by making more stars. And it would really make for a more challenging card. What's the phrase I'm looking for? I don't know. Card building. It would make that more challenging if you got one person who holds, your 2 top titles. So, when you look at the teams, it's like, of course you could see Miyu and Maki winning the match, but it's hard to imagine that they would do that when, as we've been talking about, it's just going to make it so difficult to book your cards. Of course, as you were pointing out, we look at it right here. They only have the tag title match, no Princess of Princess title match. But, they're running Korakuen a lot more than they used to. So you sometimes you're going to need both to draw a house. So I don't know. That makes this match very exciting.
Yeah, and there's also, we didn't even really touch on this, but the fact that, another Ito title challenge, how many Ito title challenges really can she lose? It feels like she's not at the breaking point now where if she loses this, she's out. But it does feel like we're closing in on the point where she should win, maybe not the tag titles, but it feels like she should win something to me. Do you feel the same way, or am I off base?
I could see that. I don't personally feel that way. I'm not opposed to the idea. Of course, she has been the International Princess title, or the International Princess Champion. So to me, it's like such a long story to be told with Maki finally winning the Princess of Princess title, for sure, that I'm still happy to be on the ride. But if you felt differently, I wouldn't say you were as wrong as you were about Sayakamitani.
I'm gonna be living that down.
No, I'll forget about
many
it
years.
by next episode. Yeah. Okay, but this thought just popped in my head. What is to become of May Saint-Michel after this team loses the tag titles? Someone we didn't mention that I just thought of as an International Princess title challenger, if she's going to be in the company as like a normal roster member after this run. And I have no idea whether that's true or not, but I think her run after this tag title reign ends is very interesting to me.
Yeah, that's very true. I don't know if they have plans to keep her around Neo Bishikigun. Because in the past, in years past, they did have sort of a stable group, and then it sort of just became Saki-sama bringing people in occasionally, and that seemed recently, the most recent example being Hyper Masao turning into Masao, as we talked about. And, I guess the question for Tokyo Joshi is, where do you think that she would serve more value? If they lose the tag titles, you would assume that they're not going to go for the tag titles again in the near future. And then sort of, is there value to, May Saint-Michel as sort of this secondary, because that largely is what she is, not in a negative way, but just in the way that Neo Bishikigun very much is sort of Saki-sama and blank. That's sort of always the way it is. And is there value to having, as you saw with Masao, they sort of lost the titles, and shortly after that, Hyper Masao came back. So obviously they felt like for Hyper Masao, there wasn't a value there to have her sort of as the secondary character. Well, May Saint-Michel not being from Tokyo Joshi, I don't know if they feel the same way, or if they would just say, oh, she's fine, there, or down the road, they change her when they say, hey, we could really use, some other character here.
She could come back as Mei Suruga.
She could. Technically, she could do both.
She could. That'd be fun.
If they really wanted.
I would love that. I love May. All right, well, that looks like a good show, so I am looking forward to it. And I'm sure we'll talk about it on the next show.
Yes, and Sendai Girls also has a big show on the 27th in Niigata. Only a few matches have been announced so far. Kaoru, Iger, and Raideen Hagane against Sakura Hirota, Haruka Umasaki, and Nanami. And then for the junior title, Mei Hoshizuki against Yurika Oka. That's an interesting match. especially depending on what happens at Gaeism. Does this junior title go back to Sendai girls if they end up losing the Sendai girls tag titles, which are now on the line in the main event of the Gaea show? So we'll see, but sort of an interesting ways that could go. And then the main event, a pretty exciting main event, Meiko Satomura and Minoru Suzuki against Nanae Takahashi and Jinsei Shinzaki. So a very sort of unusual match. This will be Meiko Satomura's last match in Japan, at least for the time being. She is moving to the UK full-time. She just recently, at least on the airings of the TV, won the NXT UK title from Kaylee Ray, so she will be there full-time. So this is her last hurrah here in Japan in what will be the main event of this big show. Also on the 27th, Ice Ribbon will be at Korakuen Hall, although nothing has been announced yet for that show. So we will have to wait and see for that. And then Catch the Wave is continuing. They have shows on the 14th and the 22nd. On the 14th, exciting match, Miyuki Takase. I was going to say, I wrote this out. It was going to be Takase against Inaba, but Inaba was just announced as injured. Today she has an injury, so that match probably will not be happening. But on the 22nd, Nagisa Nozaki against Yu. That should be a fun match. And they also have a non-Catch the Wave show on June 20th. So that is everything coming up in the next 2 weeks of Joshi Wrestling.
Is there anything else we need to talk about, Taylor?
Aaron, I think we covered it all.
Beautiful. Just what I like to hear. All right. Well, make sure you're following us on Twitter at JBombAudio. I'm at Aaron Like the Car. Taylor's at Taymainbo. Subscribe to the show. Give us a 5-star rating and review. And if you want to donate to the show, go to redcircle.com/shows/jumping-bomb-audio. That's it. And we will see you in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.